Hi folks, welcome back to the Hasty Frontier. This is Genghis Ken, and on this video we are going to show how we replace the cones, also known as nipples. Go ahead and giggle and get that out of the way. Okay, that's enough. We're going to show how we replace the cones on the on a Colt Navy model revolver. Colts and Remingtons are decidedly different, of course. The Remingtons, as demonstrated in the previous video, is a top strap model revolver. Colts are not top strap. They have no top strap on the frame along here on the top of the cylinder. And where a Remington, you can quick change the cylinders without disassembling the weapon. On Colts, unfortunately, you do have to disassemble the weapon to get the cylinder out. Now, many Colt owners don't really have an issue with that because they have slicked up their weapons so that they can get this wedge pin out pretty easy and remove and take the gun apart to get the cylinder off and reload it on a loading stand to make their life easier. So I'm going to quickly show you. I've already taken this pin out. There's nothing really special about taking out the wedge pin. To take the gun apart, you pull the front portion, which is the barrel and the chamber all together, off, and then gently pull the hammer back a little bit and slide the cylinder off. Now I'm going to put these aside because we don't need these for this process. We are just going to be focusing on replacing the cones on our cylinder. And we've got our cylinder, our nipple wrench as it's called, and we put them on here. Give it a good turn. And we unscrew this. Now we're going to be doing this for all 6 of the chambers. Well, Captain Ball made this look a lot easier than it is, didn't he? As you can kind of see, that they're a little bit longer than they give the impression they are when they're seated in the cylinder. As I mentioned in the previous video, this nipple wrench is basically kind of like a tire iron for taking your lug nuts off your truck tires with. It doesn't spin quite the same, but it does the job. Now, I spoke before in the other video about how the caps are situated on a Remington, and I made a quick mention of how they're situated on a Colt. On the Colt, and it's going to be difficult to show it on the camera with this resolution, but on the Colt, the cones face straight back because of the way the hammer works on the Colt. On a Remington, the hammer's up a little bit higher and angled differently, and so the cones actually flare out a little bit on the cylinder. Now, anybody that's fired a Remington 1858 without replacement nipples knows that that can cause a whole boat of trouble because it likes to send those caps down into the action and jam the sucker up. The same problem can certainly happen with a Colt, just in a different way. And of course, you know, we aren't the pioneers in making videos on how to change out nipples on a cylinder, but I did want to include this in our video. I seem to be getting nowhere with this one. There we go. I guess this one fits after all. See? No such thing as too many tools, right? And we always put the tools back where they belong, don't we, kids?
No.
Let's just nod our heads and make Dad feel like that's what really happens. Boy, I enjoyed this a lot more when I was having Captain Ball do it. But hey, on the bright side, I find it difficult to talk and do this at the same time, so you get a little bit of silence. Well, they were definitely in there good. Now, it's a delicate balance when you're putting your cones on your cylinder, because you really do want them on there tight enough that they're not going to fall off when you're firing. But at the same time, you don't want them on so tight that they're going to seize up and you can't get them off ever. So it's a good thing there's no power tool for putting these things on with, because just like the lug nut example I was using before, how many of you have gone to replace a flat tire and you know that the last trip you were at the garage they put the tires on and they used the air wrench to put them on, and you're out there with the lug nut trying to stand on it, on the wrench, to try and get those lug nuts off. So I'm very glad that there are no power tools for putting these cones on, because I really don't want to be having that same problem. Wow, it's so much easier putting them on than it was taking them off. Was that your experience as well, Captain Ball?
Yeah.
So it's not just me then. All right. So again, when you're starting this, you want to be very careful, because you do not want to strip the threads. So starting them, be very, very careful that it's lined up real good. And again, we're just tightening them down with a good hand tightening. We don't want to wrench them down there. I'm not trying to make them one with the cylinder, so to speak. I just want them in there good and sturdy, so they're not going to come out during competition, or anywhere else for that matter. Now, the nice thing about putting these Slix-Shot cones on is these are stainless steel, and they stand out very nicely against the blued cylinder, so it's real easy to tell where I've replaced the cone at. When I was doing this on my stainless steel Remingtons, that was not my experience. Alright, so we now have all of the cones replaced on the cylinder, and they look good. Now, I mentioned in the previous video, it's always good to have a second set to double check your work. It's not that I don't trust myself, but I want to know that I've done a good job. So I'm going to hand these off camera to Captain Ball to inspect and make sure that I've got them on there good.
Yep.
All right, Captain Ball has given the okay and says they're good to go. So now we are going to reassemble Hell in Purgatory's Colt. And I called these Colt Navies before, and these are not historical Colt Navies. These are a fantasy weapon produced in the aftermarket of what I'm sure many Colt users at the time would love to have had. It's a shortened barrel. The typical Colt Navy was a 7.5-inch barrel, standard issue. It was also only available in 36 caliber. The 44 caliber versions were Army revolvers. This is a Navy, but it's a 44 caliber Navy, and it's got a brass frame. They did not make any weapons with brass frames that they admit to making. There are rumors that this design was copied in Confederate arsenals, and they used brass to cut down on material costs, because part of the war against the South was attrition, and they had been choked off at most every port. There were blockades everywhere preventing them from getting supplies, so steel was difficult to come by. Everywhere they could save on steel would be a boon. But there's no real historical provenance that says that there were brass framed revolvers made. And there is a whole series of in-forum arguments that you can find just about anywhere about the usefulness of a brass framed revolver. And I can tell you from experience, a brass framed revolver is just fine. There is no problem firing this. Most hardcore Captain Ball shooters will tell you that firing a brass framed weapon is fine. The only thing that you don't want to try and do with a brass framed weapon is get yourself a conversion cylinder that will let you fire cartridge ammunition, like brass ammo in there, because those are higher pressure ammunition, and that can cause you some problems. But I hear things like frame stretching and things like that. It's not really that big of an issue, because the loads that we're shooting in these things are target loads. We're shooting, 20 to 30 grains of Pyrodex P in these, and it's just, we're not hunting buffalo with them, so we're not putting too much stress on the revolver. And these are great little shooters, especially for young ones. In fact, all of the women in the Hasty Family Frontier right now fire these weapons, and they're nail drivers. They are absolutely accurate, and they're fun to shoot. They feel good in the hand. They're lightweight for being a revolver. I mean, you could still, break a toe if you dropped it on your foot, which we won't do. But they are wonderful revolvers to shoot. They are very reliable, and if you have a chance to pick these up, they're priced for even the lowest budget out there. I highly recommend it. I don't think you'd be sorry. I've never met anyone who has fired them that has been sorry that they've invested in them. So, to wrap it up, this is one of Hell in Purgatory's Cap and Ball Rebel Navy in 44 caliber Sheriff Specials with new Slix-Shot nipples. Please note, I'm just showing you the label on there. The nipples that I put in that bag are what we took off of there. They're the stock Pietta nipples. And if my family would stop snickering every time I say nipple, we might get more accomplished, wouldn't we?
No.
And on that note, I bid you farewell until the next video for the Hasty Family Frontier. Subscribe, come back often, go visit our blog, read our experience, because we're trying to share what we go through doing our adventure in cowboy action shooting with the whole world. So come back and see us again. Thank you very much.